Hello, everyone, and welcome to Divination. Today, we will read all 5 articles about lost episodes. Number 1. Wow. Wubsy. The Strident Crisis. Prologue. Hi guys. I'm just wondering that you see a DVD disc for the video and that is quietly how the freaking DVD form can adapt from year to year. It's a genre immune to stagnation. At this time you wanted to see a whoopsie DVD that I just gave you, but for that, when I go home for the DVD that I just bought, so I put this DVD in it and grab a remote, but I turn this thing on for the beginning. The DVD opening. What is Anchor Bay? It begins to the Anchor Bay Entertainment logo, but it made the maroon, and everything has got a black fog. Boulder logo is melting! Doom. Then it came to the Boulder Media logo, but the background has a flames and sparks all over it. The logo is cracked, the figure got injured, and he screamed in agony. And the bidding for the incident. Mov 5/1/2005 Heaven music is heard in the background. Nightmare. It came to the Stars logo, but the text is shade of red, and it got glitches and scars, and it got blood all over it. Oh my god! It came to the Film Roman logo, but it had a little tinted red. It looked like it had eyes torn off as black incused and blue pupil outlines, and it has glitches. It came to the Nick Jr. Home Entertainment ident, but the sky was a shades of black. The frogs were got the eyes black, and pupils white half, like I don't know what the fuck happens. But how does it feel when the frogs are completely fine? But what kind of this instant? Yeah. I know that this is too freaking insane. Oh no! Paramount, are you okay? It came to the Nickelodeon fish, but this time it has back coloring, and this reddy thing was just a glitches. Its eye torn off as black incused, and a maroon pupil. I mean yeah. So is there an only fish who got fried? But not to mention, it is got even worse. It came to the Paramount Home Entertainment DVD logo, but it looks normal, so unfortunately, the disc flew into the mountain. The logo glitched out to the tint redness and brightness and blueness for the possession, and this can be the infinite the past year. So you forgot about that moves for a disc moving behind a freaking mountain like a freaking eclipse. After the logos, it showed a whoopsie for these. You know, for whoopsie, Widget, Walden, and Daisy were all friends, but actually it was be taken seriously. But yeah, I guess so. I just pressed the play all for the remote and it showed 19 episodes. And the last episode is 20. So yeah, it showed the FBI and it got freaking worse for this thing. Is it gonna be this freaking intro? Yeah. The episode intro. Whoa crap. Yeah. A weirdo in another void. It showed the intro, but everything has gotten even a worse nightmare for Whoopsie. Unfortunately, that Whoopsie was trying to sleep. What the crisis starts, so the clock is completely broken for real, but this time, the show title had a background black, was tinted red, it had Whoopsie feeling uncomfortable, the Nickelodeon Splat logo from 2008-2009 was being red, that Widget, Walden and Daisy had changed into glowingness, and they are missing. The show actually ended, if you were to look it up. The background was black, and the characters had worried and confused expressions on their faces. And lastly Whoopsie said, wow, in an uncomfortable tone. For the insanity, this title should be disengaged as it can like, this ain't my freaking day. The episode began with Whoopsie in the aesthetic void, so yeah, I mean it. So Whoopsie read out the show's episode title, The Strident Crisis. Okay, so hopefully that gerbil was completed to keep himself safe. Like bro, why the freak did he died in the void? Skull, yes. I was waiting for the beginning. The episode, part 1, WTF is he looking for? Probably an idiot liberal. You from Stupidville. The episode begins. Wubsy tried to look for his friends, but they're absent. But whatever that one was running to the untold loneliness, he was waiting and waiting that the time is up. So that Wubsy found the exit door for Tack, the amazing digital circus. Or what? Why do you even exist? What was the time that a gerbil was at the insane times? Who left Wubsy here? I mean, well, damn. Excuse me. He was opening the freaking exit, okay? I'm not joking, okay? Yeah, I've been taken this instantly. He opened the exit door and he saw a monstrosity place. The void is the no longer ever of this hull for crisis. Open this hull, but what? The hull? That is absolutely difficult. But for then, all glitches, scars, and all of them. I mean yeah, I was realizing that this yellow gerbil was in the forgotten place. Wubsy realized that the place is very scary. So yeah. Even if you don't know about this void, so I'll let you help this one. But Wubsy moves on to another place, but he didn't know this. And so, if you are wondering about that, let me explain. This gerbil was not seriously being falling into this. Part 2, Wumpy was at the desert, but something is very wrong with this world, and you know what, kids? You did why he is at the desert as doom. The reason why this gerbil is at the freaking desert, it's because the sky was very rainbow. A gerbil in the desert him fell out, but for that, he falls down to another void, the anime background of Luminous. So I guess I was trying to see this. Wait, how does that gerbil falling into the absolute void? I said, but what is the time that you just see? For my stupid ideas, I will probably just gonna go to the bathroom and vomit into a toilet like a weirdo. I guess I get back to my room and continue this. I bet this TV has some of this crazy thing to me, but that I just say so. When Widget, Walden, and Daisy were missing. So yeah, I gotta make believe that one. But anything, or even possibly didn't resist. But even though he went to something through to trouble, and something even ends here to know about this falling guy. But I just don't know why he was standing to me. But who was trying to do this to me? Wumpy cannot redo for this. So this was the third void, so what? So why is Walden here reading his own book with some glitches and a white body? But even though that couldn't be redoing this trouble that became this hellhole, but what to even do? But nothing but this shit to do for this tonight. But Walden didn't talk to Wumpy, that was while freezing in agony. But in case Wumpy is leaving Walden from freezing to death and he couldn't listen to Wumpy. But for that when Wumpy thought he tried everything about this insanity from the hallucination. Part 3, so that Wumpy realized that it had been inspired by Hortus. So that gerbil met his Septuagint clone from of his knees. But I think this had so many monsters, and that was at some kind of a sky maroon, so except for that grass, but nothing happened to the grass. Septuagint Wumpy, I am your clone. And welcome to your new home. Wumpy, what is this place? Septuagint Wumpy, this is the hell of the insanity, my new friend. Wumpy, wow, it's so scary to me. Septuagint Wumpy, it does. Yellow gerbil, what happened to Walden? Wumpy, I guess I can explore this place. Septuagint Wumpy, yes, go ahead. So Wumpy was walking into his newest home of all. But even though that's probably hellhole. Septuagint Wumpy, this is your home? Oh man, this isn't happening. Wumpy, my home? Whoa, that looks different. So if you don't know this part, then let me explain to you for this. Thank God. But even that this exit completely exists to know that to this one, if this was for Wumpy. But that is just a fundamental paper education reference, but something. So Wumpy got on this void, and this probably just this, but maybe Alice. But he just saw Alice with her abstraction like Kaufmo from the Amazing Digital Circus. Wumpy, thank freaking God, Alice. Oh, hi Wumpy. Wumpy, exclamation. Oh, WH, what is this place? Alice, this is me, Alice. Wumpy, so how does this be, Alice? Your dreams, can you press the blue button? Wumpy, what? How should I do this? Alice, just press the blue button, it can be a good ending. Wumpy, alright then, Alice, you got this. Wumpy just pressed this blue button, but what could nothing go wrong? But that is why this is was at better places. Alice, good job, you press the blue button, you will be sent you back to Wuzzleberg. Wumpy, oh, Alice, I'll be back for you soon, okay Wumpy, okay. But even though Wumpy gets back to Wuzzleberg, but what could possibly happen today? And something ends up of the insanity, and even though he realized he was in the Wuzzleberg, but it happens a lot. Part 4, finale. Wumpy saw the Wuzzleberg ain't even right. But for now, Widget, Walden and Daisy were just standing at him, but this time, he was glitchy. But he didn't really notice that it was the sky dark. But something that is real. He wasn't noticed at all for this custody of this serum. But I'm still finding out for that one to the fresh midnight. And even that they were probably missing or something where everyone had very trouble finding out where this had a huge problem for that. Crazy exclamation 1 exclamation 11 exclamation 11. Man, I thought this was the Wuzzleberg. Wumpy just said to the authority. But he wasn't just stand here but for long, but he would not be able to confront. Wumpy, I'm thinking that it's glitching. Widget told him though, and this was just a supreme prank of him. But this is fine. But Wumpy just said what? To her. And that is just another one that he had something to show this, but or something that is gonna be real. So Widget and Walden were gonna introduce themselves. Oh, I am Widget. And I am Walden. But something this was going to be real, but he won't handle killing. Are you still? Wubbzy tried to start a conversation to Widget and Walden. To do this trick this was the opinion, but there was nothing that they can do for that. But something real. Yeah, we need to tell you Wubbzy, is that you're my favorite friend ever, Widget told him instantly. But I'm starting to feel humble for that episode. But even though that Widget was gonna have a conversation back to Wubbzy. Wait, who is your favorite friend ever? Wubbzy just asked Widget apparently, or something that was just real. You, little buddy, will be back. Widget totally told Wubbzy about the ghosts or something that wasn't happening to the Wuzzleberg, or that is it for now. How does that feel? Wubbzy just said to them only that it was him, but I don't know about that. Wish my luck Wubbzy, hope you will be safe. Widget told him instantly for so much of that. That was somewhere in this video, but this was not a drill, and that is why that ain't worth of this shit of that. But even that is gonna be the blast. Man, I thought this was the Wuzzleberg. Wubbzy sadly just said about the whole Wuzzleberg, but which means this was a prank to a yellow beast. But that was just the insanity. But nothing can actually got any further, or I didn't know this one. But even though both of these got a lot of the ghostness, but something that is real, and that is something to do about this joking spree. But some kind of the number one ghost. But not for that everyone has disappeared, but except for Wubbzy. He didn't disappear for real, but for the love of this insanity. And someone has the time to visit. But looks like someone is visiting the Wuzzleberg. How did they probably disappear except me? Wubbzy just probably said. But he had better surgeries. But this wasn't the day of that. And just Kirkard. But he just trying to do this to fall apart. I am coming for you! Kirkard just mean it. But he didn't even notice that Kirkard was gonna say. But something that could happen in this place for Wubbzy for sure. Oh dear. He was just going to say to Kirkard. But he grabs Wubbzy. But he is evil to him, but that wasn't real for that one. He get off of me! Wubbzy just said this to him. But he was giant. And that is for the theory. But even though that he was giving a chance to this one for sure, but this was not for this one for the instance. Must go down yellow creature! He begins to kill him for sure, but for his safety for that. But even Widget, Walden and Daisy were gone for sure, but except for him for real. But this wasn't just the authority, but something for this instant, but for this instant. And I thought that was even just for this one. But Kirkard had decided to kill everyone in this world, but he just killed him for real. But this was that kind of gore. But ever since he was currently dead for once because of Kirkard. And that's it for now. This is the end of this episode. But I was currently scared that it was the most scariest lost episode in this city. The credits, and the logos. But for once, it came through to the credits. But how about something that was not gonna be normal at all? But this letter were got beaten up by this instant. But this time for the background was some kind of this mist, but whatever. But this needs to do that one, but it is the shade of the darkness of the flesh. But this one of that one for I guess this one for this insanity. But for this one of this of that one, but even though this is a blast by this last one. But since there was just no jump scare in this most of all of this last episode. Dear Neptune! 111! So this logo had a life of these ones for the hellhole. But it actually appeared into the Boulder Media logo, but that was this one of these insanities. So this logo had completely broke into this one. So this figure just fell down, but really. So this is one of this background of this shade of black, but even the bloody midnight moon that was rising before. But this is true for the year. And it knows to keep these ones to them, but for this one to this insanity, and before it was lost for our home. Oh crap! And for this one, the Stars Media logo. And this was the time to show them up, but for that, this star had this shady read of this, and even this background, so it was black, but this one of those insanities, but something wasn't right to me, so I wasn't noticed this one of that logo of that. The Nick JR Productions logo, and there is the Nick JR logo at this one for this one, and for this one, but even at the background is the most of the black red of all night for that, but the figures are even black, but even their outlines are even red though, but even the Nick text is even reversed to the case in text, but it said, case in dot, but maybe the second figure got killed by someone, but even though that was the most year of that midnight of this, so the Nick JR horror jingle, but even slow, and reverb is heard in this whole background, the Nickelodeon logo, but maybe the Nickelodeon logo, but I don't know this one. But even the haystack was the fully red maroony, and for this one of the text is going on to this, so some of these backgrounds, but seriously and actually for once of that is real now for the flesh, and somewhere at the copyright byline is so weird though, but this red shade of gore was not dripping, but nothing but an imbecile, and even the logo, and the byline or something that was screwed up, but even though the Nickelodeon horror jingle with the slowed and reverb is even heard on this whole background, but even that wasn't very wholesome to do. But finally the film Roman logo, but even just the DVD opening, or that one of this one, or this is just messed up to do to this one, and this had an underworld, but this one had a style, but it wasn't had any ideas that this wasn't doing this nightmare. The Paramount logo, and this isn't happening right now, but even the Paramount logo, and at this moment that was really screwed up right now, but seriously, and how was this hospitalized? And how was this no jump scare at the end of this episode? And for something that isn't real for this, the sky had faded black now, and this logo had a mountain with some 5 eyes of these, and this even possessed by Kirkard, but someone that wasn't just him to do, and some of those years it has been heard, but even the most scary music of this background. It edited picture of Kane from the Amazing Digital Circus pilot. He has red teeth, he was crying blood, and his eyes were black and red pupils. It has loud version of FF4 jump scare sound, and loud version of G major version of Godzilla roar. That jump scare scared me if it hurts so loud. I covered my ears until jump scare was over. Aftermath, this is the most best lost episode that I just saw. But this DVD was just messed up though, but I ain't ready for that thing, but that isn't real for now, but I don't even know this DVD anymore of that, but maybe that is the last episode of Wubsy, and this is not my day so I cannot even sleep, because of this one, so one of these freaking days that ain't worth of, but I wasn't doing this by my own, but maybe it was even Cleany Brown, or some of that, but I don't wanted to see this one of that insanity, or whatever, but yeah, I guess I didn't even solve this for the first day, but I just realized that the Lost Media episode wasn't real for now, but not gonna lie, or I don't know this one, but please do not watch this last episode of that, you know that is not for kids now, but this is an anomaly, and it's cold to do this gruesome, so it was just a possession, but I know it's not very insane for now, but it is to do this episode in this day after day. Alright guys, thank you so much for reading my own creepypasta called Wubsy, the last episode, The Strident Crisis. So don't forget to watch here and enjoy this new creepypasta reading, and then you vote for now. So please do not plagiarize this creepypasta for once, but if you do this again, you are gonna see these consequences. So make your own creepypasta and something else but what to do for today. Oh, and by the way, please don't request me for all of the blacklisted stories or something of that, or any creepypasta fanons that you wanted to do this wholesome. Bye now. Number 2. The Blue's Clues Lost episode. You know, I always liked Blue's Clues. It was a show about a lonely man who lived in his apartment and seemed to have issues solving very simple dilemmas. He was guided by his dog, Blue, a blue dog. It's a great show with a lot of mentally stimulating material, but what a lot of people don't know is that various elements of the original plotline were stripped out in favor of more family-friendly entertainment. The pilot episode, created by Todd Kessler and whoever David Veniel was an interesting take on the original idea, though maybe slightly more adult in tone. Steve, for example, is slightly blind. This is why he had his dog Blue, a seeing eye dog was meant to help him find things. The clues were intended to be the dog trying to assist Steve in things like finding groceries and going to the bathroom. The episode starts slightly differently. Instead of the yellow book saying Blue's Clues opening, instead a book titled Disability Aid for Impaired Humans is shown. A picture of a skeleton man in a top hat with a cane is on the cover. Indeed, the show looks a little different. The show used computer-generated stills to render its backdrops, but these stills were grainier and of lower quality. The yard looked fairly unkempt and dirty, for example. Another issue I noticed, which became more and more glaringly obvious as time progressed, was that Steve had 2 dark circles under his eyes. Indeed, Steve looked a little sick. Little did I know how sick Steve was. Steve was sick. Anyway, Steve was played by the same actor, but he was much slower. He had a speech impediment, which made his words slightly slurry. Come on in. He huffed like Droopy Dog. Blue the dog also looked different. The skin was textured more like a real dog. While still blue, there were noticeably fur-like hairs on the character model, and the eyes sparkled like a real puppy dog's. In one regard it looked cute, but in another, it just seemed a little off. Steve's shirt was frail and tattered. The walls of the home were kind of dirty too, with fading wallpaper. Steve's usual sofa chair was dirtier. Some sort of stain was on it. It was hard to make out. Steve went to get the mail. He sang his usual song, but instead of lyrics, it was just the word mail over and over. Mail, 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 mail. He stammered. He shuddered a little and almost fell over. Mail. He excitedly opened the mail to find nothing but a few bills and an expired coupon for a free Chick-fil-A sandwich. I don't know what I was expecting, Steve said with a scowl. I don't have any friends. There was a long pause. Except for you, kids. He pointed at the camera and smiled at the camera as it zoomed into his face, revealing a disheveled amount of beard stubble. I need something fun to do today, Steve exclaims. Blue is seen in the corner, tugging away at the corner of a rug. As Steve continues to talk, the rug is slowly pulled away more and more, revealing a trapdoor. A symbol of an eye is carved on the door along with the Latin phrase, Hic Asparagus, which roughly translates to unintelligent blind man. Steve is visibly shaking as he adjusts his house's thermostat. The thermostat is a real thermostat, not a drawn-in one. In fact, many of the objects that would be drawn in are more like pasted on clip art. I need to clean myself, Steve says. He goes into his bathroom and begins to shower. Suddenly, the soap begins to scream. What the hell are you doing? The soap yells. Steve sees that the soap has a face, and while it's a cute smiley face, he looks really confused. He begins to freak out and throws the soap in the toilet, flushing it down while it screams bloody murder. He notices tiny faces on all of his other cosmetic and hygiene products. What's next? Singing toothpaste? The voice said from the other room. I just imagined that, Steve said. Blue, he yelled. Help me find something fun to do. Blue winked at the camera and lead Steve into the kitchen area. I'll take your mouse too, a voice said from the other room again. Steve walked into his kitchen, which had a small fire burning in the corner. The utensil drawer was shaking. There were living utensils in there, he knew it. Steve bumped into the side of the table and fell down. Blue placed a paw print. The first clue. Sitting on the table behind Steve's corpse was a blue paw print on a cucumber. The first clue. Blue seemed slightly sinister looking. There were 6 copies of a slightly transparent blue sprite all layered over each other. Look. A voice yelled. What? Steve said. Right there. The voice yelled. What is it? It was the same thing it always was, a clue. And the clue was clearly visible, so why couldn't Steve see it? A strange figure in a cloak slid across the room without moving its legs. It may have been a prop on wheels, but whatever it was, it took several random items, such as chairs and bowls as it made its rounds across the room. What is it? Steve said. The flames continued to eat the background. It's a clue. A grizzled, older man's voice yelled. How the hell can you not see that? It's right fucking there. Steve squinted and picked up the cucumber. He opened up his notepad and tried to draw it, but he was shaking too much and ended up drawing something weird. I couldn't really tell what it was. It looked like a picture of Hitler at a children's birthday party. Steve was then led to the second clue, which again had the man yelling angrily. You can hear me, I know you can, whispered that slithery voice from the other room. Steve needed another shower. He showered again, and then found the second clue. It was a jar of Vaseline. He couldn't even draw this, it was just a straight line followed by the camera cutting back to him with one eye closed. A few seconds later Steve is seen on the phone with his doctor. I feel like my dog is trying to kill me, and all of the utensils, furniture and appliances in my house have faces. The phone is disconnected. Steve is shown walking over his door to lock it with great paranoia. He drags a huge deadbolt across the door and turns around to adjust a crooked picture of the room he's in on the wall. Look. The voice yelled. The third clue was on Steve's right butt cheek. Steve went over to the chair and began to deliberate on his clues. He said. What is something I can do with a cucumber, Vaseline, and he thought and thought about it. He asked the audience. He paced around the room. He tried desperately to comprehend what the clues added up to, but he couldn't. Blue suddenly began to talk in a heavy German accent. I want you to put the cucumber in your ass. Steve began to scream as the dog jumped forward, revealing rows and rows of teeth like a trash compactor. Do I tee you out? The teeth began to rotate in a machine-like fashion as Steve ran into the other room. The door was gone. He tried desperately to draw a new door with a crayon, but the fires from the kitchen had made the home so hot that the crayon melted into the wall. A bloodied wheelchair covered in leeches lay in the corner. Blue's head elongated by a foot in length, and his eyes grew as wide as saucers now. Talon-like claws grew from his skin, and his or the rows of teeth began to grind up the backdrop. Steve's last hope was the trapdoor from earlier. He ran over to it and pulled it open, diving into it. Blue's monstrous teeth chattered as he began to sprout bony wings, and blood began to pool from beneath his feet. His stomach opens up, and highly realistic gore begins to spew in mammoth chunks from everywhere. Massive columns of fire erupted from behind him as the walls cracked and broke. A strange, hollow, soulless noise began to envelop the screen as demonic spikes slowly rose from the ground around him. "I'm not blue," he boomed. "I'm red." 24 dead bodies lay at the bottom of the trapdoor. Steve stumbled over them, his blindness not allowing him to realize what they were. The blood-red dog-like demon bit into Steve's arm, leaving a bloodied and gnarled mess. Steve reached across the floor and picked up a crowbar and lifted it high, slamming it brutally into Blue's skull, cracking it into bloodied pieces. Blue, or red as he liked to be called, exploded, sending gore flying in all directions. Steve slammed against the wall and joined the pile of bodies that were laying face down on the floor. The center of the explosion had revealed Blue's true core. A little skeleton man in a top hat and a monocle began to dance around. He did all kinds of crazy dances with a sinister smile. As the skeletal man began to dance like Michigan J. Frog, a voice whispered, "I'm in your home." I personally looked around my own home and saw nothing. The tape should have ended there. The credits to the children's program began to roll, but they were abruptly cut off by some random conversation between two people. "This really is good pizza," one of them says. "It's Steve. They say when you lose one sense, it heightens the others." Steve says. "Hard to enjoy it." Steve continued, holding a spoon. There was nobody else there. He was having a conversation with the air at his dinner table. "I wouldn't enjoy this as much if I had my eyes." Pause. "He took my eyes." Steve screamed. The camera cut to Steve, with two abyss-like holes that were wider than normal eye sockets. Deep within his eye sockets, there was a nothingness as he sat there, and smiled, and enjoyed his pizza. He wasn't alone though. The shovels and pails, the salt and pepper shakers, the garbage cans, and the refrigerators were all alive and well. Number 3. The Amazing World of Gumball, The Breathing. I've always loved Cartoon Network. When I was growing up, it was my favorite channel to watch. Even today it has some good shows, like Adventure Time and Regular Show. One of the newest shows on the network, The Amazing World of Gumball, is a cute and mildly entertaining show. Not really my cup of tea, it's a little immature, but my little brother seems to like it a lot. One day, I was watching Adult Swim when I realized that I'd been up so late that I hadn't even kept track of the time. It was already 4 a.m. I don't recall ever watching as this late, so I stayed awake to see what would happen when it ended. A little bumper showed up at the bottom of the screen during a commercial break. It said that a special episode of The Amazing World of Gumball was about to come on. I was a little confused about an episode of a very popular new show coming on this early, but I was bored and decided I would watch it, thinking it might come on later in the day so I could spoil it for my brother. Sort of mean, I know. The flashy and energetic intro theme played, although it was played a little differently than I recall. The music was a little different, and the show's logo wasn't animated. Its colors were done rather sloppily as well, almost like something a little kid would do on a doodle board or a glow board. I ignored it, assuming that it was done just for this special episode. The title of the episode was The Breathing, a sort of sad title, but I didn't really pay too much attention. It began with Gumball, the show's 12-year-old protagonist, standing alone facing a corner of his dimly lit classroom. He looked absolutely miserable, a far cry from the cheerful demeanor he usually had. There was no one else in the room, not even his best friend and adopted brother Darwin the goldfish, and the windows in the room clearly showed the night sky outside. I was really starting to get confused. Why would he be at school at night, and why was he standing in the corner all sad and alone? After about what seemed like a minute of Gumball standing somberly in the corner, the scene suddenly changed. We were in Gumball's house. Once again the scene is silent and a little disquieting. Richard, Gumball's enormous rabbit father, walks in from the kitchen. He looked even more miserable than Gumball had in the previous scene. Richard isn't wearing his usual attire. He's dressed in a fancy black suit, a little uncharacteristic of him, as he's usually a slob. He sighs, and slumps down onto the sofa, and starts sobbing intensely, sounding like someone who had just lost something important. I was starting to get a little creeped out. Where was the silly, fun cartoon that I usually looked forward to watching with my younger brother? This was something completely different. I was beginning to think that this might have been something the creators did as an experiment or something, a test of the animation or sound perhaps. Oh, it couldn't have been, aside from the opening theme, which was still different from the final shows. The episode had been much quieter than it usually was, only subtle sounds and very little music, and the animation was not anything to write home about either. It was done a bit like an amateur flash on new grounds. The character designs were somewhat sloppy and rushed looking, and the real-life backgrounds used for the show looked different, as confused and somewhat frightened as I was. For some reason, I kept watching it. Poor Richard was still sobbing on the sofa as the front door opened suddenly, making me jump a bit at such a loud noise, and Gumball's mother Nicole, a blue cat like him, stepped in. Like Richard, she wasn't wearing her usual outfit. For some reason, she was in a black dress and was wearing a pretty black hat to match. Nicole sat down on the couch to comfort her husband, although she was looking a bit saddened herself. By this point Richard's crying had begun to get more pained and miserable sounding. This wasn't the normal cartoon crying on the show, this was realistic and almost depressing crying. Finally, after what seemed like hours, the sad scene at their home ended, as it shifted back to the school. We weren't in Gumball's classroom this time, we were in Principal Brown's office. Nicole and Richard were there, in their usual clothes, looking more normal and happy than they had before, but still slightly worried. Principal Brown, however, looked extremely sad. He quietly and summarily informed them that their children, Anna and Darwin, were not present after lunch earlier that day. They hadn't been seen at all the rest of the day. Nicole was instantly furious at him. She began spouting various fucks and calls at him that I don't think would have made it on a more mature program like regular show. I was laughing at this, because it seemed sort of funny for Nicole to flip out in this manner and start swearing like a sailor in a G-rated cartoon, but my outlook soon changed when Principal Brown told her something else after she finally had quieted down. His eyes began to tear up as he informed them that they eventually were found, but they had not been found alive. He then went into graphic and nearly nauseating detail describing how their bodies were found, their parents sitting in utter shock. I could hardly believe what was happening. How could such a cheery and fun kids show be taking such a dark and twisted turn? I was considering turning the television off, but I was too scared to be left in the dark by now, nearly frozen by fear and disturbed intensely at the terrible things that he was saying. Another flashback, the scene was earlier that day, and the animation in this scene was even worse than earlier. I don't remember it very clearly, but I think he began his recollection by saying that the school had called the police department when they first turned up missing, believing that the kids had simply ran off and decided to skip school. They said it was very uncharacteristic of both Darwin and Anna to go skipping school like delinquents. Darwin was a little naive and a bit ditzy, but he was a good kid and wouldn't have even dreamed of doing something like that. And Anna was even less likely to run away. She was as straight a student, despite being only 4, which also troubled the police, seeing as a defenseless 4-year-old little girl was missing as well as an older boy. The school had been thoroughly checked, so the police started to search the heavily wooded area outside of the school. It took little time for the police to discover the horrifying fate of Anais. In a small clearing outside of the school, Anais' head was found in a small box. You likely would have expected something like that to be shown in the show's cutesy art style, but it was nothing like that at all. Realistic blood covered the box, inside and out, while Anais' head was done in the normal style, but was drenched in blood and some other fluids, not all of them hers apparently. There was a note in the box, seemingly written in her blood. It was never stated during the episode what exactly was written on the note, but it apparently led to the rest of her remains and Darwin's heavily mutilated corpse. What I remember most about this scene was how out of place it seemed. All the blood and gore from Darwin and Dennis's slaughtered and dismembered remains was done in a very realistic and disturbing way. It looked like the scene had been taken from a crime scene photograph done by a professional, not something from a cartoon. The way this scene was animated was different from most of the show as well. You may know that the characters from this series are done in vastly differing animation styles, from flash animation to CGI, and I think that there's even a character done by someone putting their chin upside down to make a face. This particular scene wasn't like anything I had ever seen on the show before. Every little detail on Darwin's face was clearly illustrated. He looked a little like a zombie. His face was very pale and his eyes had been gouged out by someone. And I fared no better, or what was left of her anyway. She was naked and her stomach had been slit open. Her intestines were strewn around the trees and bushes in the woods, done once again in a very morbid and realistic style. I was feeling very ill by the time this incredibly disturbing flashback had come to an end, so I quickly ran to the bathroom to vomit. I was feeling better after chucking, so I had realized that I had good timing and had ran to the bathroom during a commercial. It was then I noticed that the show had been running twice as long. It usually ran for 11 minutes, but this episode was running for about 30. By then I was wondering if there was any information on the briefing on IMDb or something, so while the commercials were still playing I looked up some information about this episode on Google. Nothing came up, no information remotely similar to the plot or name of this episode existed anywhere. Now incredibly scared and wondering if anyone else was watching, I quickly dialed my brother Larry and asked him to turn on Cartoon Network and see if he was seeing the same shit that I was. He was pretty mad that I woke him up at this hour, but he's a nice guy and told me he would see for me. I thanked him and stayed on the line as the show came back from commercial break. The scene had thankfully panned away from the horrific sight of the children mutilated and was back to the principal's office. I asked Larry if he saw some cartoon animals talking or crying, since that was what they were doing on my TV. To my surprise, he said that he saw nothing like that. Instead it was a rerun of an old Looney Tunes short. In utter shock, I dropped the phone and ran over to the TV to turn it off, and as hard as I pressed the buttons it would not shut off at all. I tried every single button and none of them did a thing. I tried unplugging the whole thing as well, but nothing worked. The TV stayed on no matter what. Larry had hung up, assuming that I was playing a joke or something, I guess, and I was alone once again. My door was locked from the outside somehow, and the door to my bathroom was now locked as well. It seemed that I had no choice but to call the police, since my other family members were gone that night. It was the reason I could stay up so late to watch Adult Swim in the first place. When I hurriedly dialed the number, I accidentally dropped my cell phone into my cup of Pepsi. I was very scared, and had no choice but to finish the episode. I turned on all the lights in my room and got under the covers, hiding like my little brother does when I make him watch scary movies with me. I had apparently missed a little bit, but Gumball's parents were still talking to Principal Brown, so not that much. Nicole was asking him if Gumball was alright, apparently since she hadn't remembered him when Principal Brown told her what had happened to Darwin and Dennis. He looked slightly confused and shocked for a moment, and explained to her that he thought Gumball was out sick today and he had spent the day at home by himself with a stomach bug. Nicole screamed and wailed, while Richard quietly told him, in a very out-of-character voice, that they thought Gumball had got on the bus this morning, but it didn't seem that way. The police were called once again to search the building and the small forest outside of Elmore Junior High. They had found him in Miss Simeon's classroom, hanging by a noose, with a blood-covered knife behind him and blood covering his clothing. The episode ended with a shot of Gumball's dead body hanging there in the corner fading to black. The credits rolled silently, not like the usual way Cartoon Network annoyingly airs a promo that squishes half the screen. These credits rolled unusually slow and they weren't that fun to watch either, a little creepy, just plain white text scrolling on a black background. I only recognized Ben Bockwell's name, as he was the creator of the show. The rest were people I'd never heard of. The copyright notice at the end said Copyright Cartoon Network Studios, 2001, which was incredibly odd, seeing as the show was new for 2011. After all that was over, the screen went to static for a split second, during which some incredibly creepy and shocking video clips were shown between static intervals. I can still remember them all very clearly. The first was a picture of a person in a plague doctor outfit. Those always scared me for some reason, and the way the person in the suit was filmed was just as bad. A red light, something that freaks me out incredibly, was shone over the clip. The next was what seemed like a video being played very quickly, over and over, of a kitten's face being squished by a woman wearing high heels, which was strange because a so-called friend of mine sent me a picture yesterday of a cat being stepped on and killed, similar to the kitten in the video. The last one was the one that disturbed me the most and made me want to both cry and vomit my guts out. It was my little brother, or at least a small child, who looked very similar to him, being shot in the face by a person who looked like my father. You could clearly see the child's brains and blood splatter on the wall. I began to sob uncontrollably after that traumatizing clip, so much so that I passed out. When I woke up, my door was unlocked, and my television was turned off. I went to call the police on the home phone in my kitchen and report that I had seen some very disturbing things on TV and that my doors had been locked. When they arrived, they could find nothing like what I remembered from early this morning. I told my brother about the episode, and he fainted. My internet history was even cleared. They were angry at me and just assumed that I had had a bad nightmare when I was sure I hadn't. Good thing I recorded the episode. The officers were shocked at what I showed them. One of the officers felt bad for me and took me out to a small diner so I could recollect my thoughts at the diner. I remembered that my family was out visiting my aunt, and they were supposed to be back by noon or so. It was already 11, so the officer and I drove back only to find a whole squad of police cars and even some government agents at my house. They explained to me that my little brother was missing and that my mother and father were major suspects. I was freaking out and trying to tell them about the disturbing clip of the boy who looked like my brother being shot in the head, but they wouldn't listen. I stayed with my older brother, Larry, who wouldn't believe me either, still insisting that all he saw was an old Looney Tunes cartoon and nothing at all creepy or weird. The cops eventually told me that they would contact Turner Broadcasting and tell them about the incident. A representative of Turner Broadcasting came to my cousin's house to talk to me in private about what I had seen and experienced that night. He was very kind, but it all seemed a little like some sort of front. After I could tell him all I remembered, he agreed to play back that day's programming from when the incident with the disturbing gumball episode had occurred. To my shock, all that was airing at that time was an old Looney Tunes short, nothing more, nothing less. I hysterically sobbed and moaned that what I had experienced and seen was completely real, but no one listened. Eventually, I discovered that Ben Bockwellet had a Twitter account, so I sent a message about the episode, and this was the reply I got. One thing, how in the heck did you find that? I never, ever, ever thought I would think about that old shame again. Don't tell anyone this, Sarah. Yes, that's my name, but the amazing world of Gumball goes back further than you know. I used to have a really boring job as a teen, and I sketched little drawings of the Wattersons and friends. The episode you saw was never supposed to be seen by anyone but me and a few friends of mine. It was a very, very awful thing to do, but we made the episode as a joke. A guy from my old job, who everyone hated, had lost a child to a crazed serial killer, who is apparently still out there somewhere. Anyway, we made it so we could make fun of how he came into work usually, crying like a fool, which is why you saw Mr. and Mrs. Watterson cry so much in the episode. I know, I am deeply sorry for what I did, which is why I tried to bury that stupid thing years ago. Literally, I went out into the countryside with my mates and dug a hole and buried it. What I don't get though, is how you described the blood and guts and stuff. We didn't have any scene with Darwin and Ananias's bodies being found. All that happens in the episode is the parents are informed of the kids being found dead and them crying like crazy. We didn't even draw anything in the episode like that, at all. We're not that sick. Now, this is my theory. The lunatic who killed the man's child found the tape we buried, watched it, and heavily edited it. Then, he hijacked the local TV station near me, somehow, and got the episode to air on your local Cartoon Network station. Now, why your brother couldn't see it, I have no idea. Why it seems you're the only one who saw it, I have no idea either. Sorry, but I just don't know. Now, for the explanation you have been waiting for, the clips at the end. I don't know. I don't. I'm deeply sorry, from the bottom of my heart, but I don't know why those clips were aired. I just don't. I am sorry, I really am, but me and my mates are just the ones who made those scenes with Richard and Nicole crying, that's it. I'm so sorry, Sarah, I'm so deeply sorry. Best wishes, Ben Bockwellet, and everyone involved with the grieving. Seriously, stay the fuck away from that episode. Number 4. Amanda the Adventurer, a bootleg of Dora the Explorer. If you grew up with Dora the Explorer, chances are you've seen those lost episodes, like Dora's Real Life, and such. Well, during the Dora the Explorer craze, a French company called Camel Entertainment created a series called Amanda the Adventurer, focusing on a girl named Amanda, and her sheep named Wooly. How does this relate to the story? My name is David, a Nickelodeon intern, and let me tell you this story, so get your popcorn ready, because it's going to get good. The front of the VHS story, the Camel logo. The story begins in 2001, when Sam Colton, a struggling writer, was trying to make a new cartoon. With the rise of Dora, he asked his daughter, Rebecca Colton, to voice a character named Amanda. And I was one of the animators of the Dang Nab show, but this is where the show's name comes from. And it was aired on the CBBC network. But what about the episodes? Here's the entire episode list, according to the production guide. The birthday, air date, September 1st, 2000. Amanda is planning a surprise party for her friend Kate. They need to get a cake, send it to the post office, and that's about it. Surgery, air date, October 31st, 2001. When Wooly gets hurt at a rundown playground, Amanda takes him to a surgeon. The episode seems innocent enough, until you look at the footage from the deleted versions of the episodes. One moment shows Amanda with a saw, trying to kill Wooly, and a bear trap, with a dead fox. This is where CBBC started to get complaints about the show, and sadly, the show was pulled, with BBC asking Camel to make one last season. The last episode, never aired, was called The End, which focused on Amanda talking to the viewers next to a tomb of Wooly, saying that they had good times together. And that's where the episode ends. Where does the company exist now? Well, they used to work in a Toronto studio, making shows like Froggy Show, Bird Jokes, The Talking Animals Live, and more, just to name a few. But they got a letter saying that the studio was in bad shape, and they had to shut down. So, if you go the company's page, it will present a sad red mouse, with a 404 error message. Number 5. No Dogs in a creepy version of Nickelodeon. I'm pretty sure you're a 90s kid, and you remember how popular Nickelodeon was in your day, with loads of tunes to watch Saturday morning. It had its flaws ever since 2011. You see, it had all these trends that people find old and stuff, but my story is about something evil, so despicable, it made me scarred for life. I was watching Nickelodeon on my TV, cause what else would I be doing besides playing outside, or playing Roblox on the Xbox One? I just got watching Big Chungus Rampage in Big Forest, and it was awesome as usual. I was scrolling through the channel guide to see what to watch next, since Nickelodeon is airing an episode of a show that I didn't like. As I was scrolling through the guide, I came across a channel called NOE. I could tell from the guide that this was how you say the channel name in short terms, but what was strange, the channel number was 666. WTF, I spoke. I had a bad feeling that this could be a channel for the devil himself. I pressed select on the remote on the channel and, oh, exclamation. It was scarier than I expected it to be. The channel was airing a scary version of the SpongeBob SquarePants end credits, and the Crystal Cove theme song is loud, along with a scary version of the United Plankton logo, but Plankton was spelled backward, and it had .mp4 on it, along without the Death Squidward picture from Red Mist. Then it had shown another fucking lost episode. It was Red Mist, then came something that looked like the Nickelodeon splat, but it was so different, like I suspected it to be. The words were spelled backwards, the splat looked more like a red splat, and the music sounded like it came from an old record player, and at the bottom it said 666 MTV networks. This started to become so clear to me now. In the guide the channel name said NOE. It was short for how Nickelodeon is spelled backwards, which is No Dog Cyan. This TV channel was nothing but a monster, but the question was, who the hell made this TV channel to begin with anyway? I asked angrily. I went to my laptop to do some research on No Dog Cyan. I looked it up on Google and I found results for it. I clicked on one of them that was a news article about the channel. It wrote No Dog Cyan and people scares around the world. The channel No Dog Cyan is the most horrifying channel to ever exist. Critics says, is this some Halloween phase? We can assure you that this ain't no Halloween phase. It's all real scary stuff. Be warned, never show it to your children, or their childhood can say bye-bye. It's weird that the news knew about the channel, but it still doesn't answer my question of who made the channel from the start it was aired on TV. So I went back to the TV and saw what else No Dog Cyan put on their channel. Well, it can't be scarier than that. I spoke. I was wrong. The channel now played the end credits to a creepy episode of Rugrats, and my heart is already racing. The classic Shizuko slot logo played, but what's different is that Shizuko was spelled backwards, just like Nickelodeon with Odol Cyan, and the splat said Opus C Castle K, and it displayed as Opus C Castle K.mp4 nightmares. Makes sense, since this whole channel was a nightmare. Now I was expecting the same blood splat logo I saw last time, but something else came on. It was Odol Cyan's version of the Nickelodeon Laugh logo from 2000, but the difference was that it had a scream that sounded like something from a G major video on YouTube. It was so loud, I had to cover my ears. When I uncovered my ears, I noticed red liquid on my hands. My ears literally bled from hearing that scream. I screamed. After I cleaned my bloody ears off, I had one way to find out about this channel, and that was to email Nickelodeon themselves about it. So, I went to Yahoo Mail and made an email to Nickelodeon about Odol Cyan. About a few days later, they finally answered. This what their email said in response. Hello Nickelodeon fan from Texas. We are so sorry you one of the people who was Odol Cyan. People around asked this same question to us of who made it and where it came from. Well, what we all know is that this was all done by a guy named George Ortiz. He used to be an employee in our studio, and he apparently made a secret dank version of our TV channel and made dank posters of lost episodes of our shows a reality, so we fired him and was never to be seen again. Sorry for seeing this TV channel. So it was George Ortiz that was responsible for it, I said. I was angry cause he was the reason there was a creepy version of Nickelodeon, and now more and more people's childhoods are going to be ruined thanks to him. I rushed back to the TV and changed it back to regular Nickelodeon, and SpongeBob started playing. To all the people reading this, beware of what tricks George Ortiz has with Odol Cyan. It can kiss your childhood goodbye. And that's all for this video. I hope you liked it, and I will see you next time. Bye.